This episode of Proof of Decentralization is brought to you by the Tornado Cash community. Privacy is a human fight. By the way, I borrowed that saying from Samurai Wallet, who borrowed it from somebody else. But it applies to Tornado, so let's use it. Privacy is a human fight, because if we don't fight for it every single day, we are going to lose it. There are global forces that are working every day to chisel away at your privacy, because they say they want to make the world a safer place. Safer from who? Not from you, right? From terrorists, from drug dealers, from criminals. Therefore, they say anybody who seeks privacy must be one of those things. Are you a terrorist? Are you a drug dealer? Are you a criminal? No, of course not. It's not wrong for you to want privacy, especially on Ethereum where everything is transparent. Tornado Cash does that, and for you to use it is smart. It's not wrong, it's smart, no matter what they tell you. So go learn more about it, use it properly. If you're gonna use it properly. You can get started right now at tornado.cash. Always check those URLs, tornado.cash. On this episode of Proof of Decentralization, I'm joined by Nick Fett of Tellor. That's Tellor. It's a decentralized Oracle project, and we talk a lot about the Oracle problem in DeFi. We talk about what it's like to run a DeFi project that actually sticks to its principles of decentralization and trustlessness. And we also talk about Chainlink and some of their centralization issues. I hope you enjoy it. Nick Fett is joining me here today from Tellor, my employer, right?
Yes.
Thank you for all of the funds and all the pay you've sent me and all of the, oh my gosh, man, that Chainlink campaign was killer. Like, we really crushed it, don't you think?
It was super good. Yeah.
We're kidding, by the way. They didn't pay me a dime. For those who don't know what I'm talking about, when I started to mention Chainlink's multi-sig and vulnerabilities and all the little anonymous frog Twitter accounts came out and they found a photo of me wearing a free Tellor shirt that I got at ETH Denver, where, you know, my whole goal there is to get as many shirts as possible so I don't have to buy any t-shirts throughout the year. And yeah, you're wearing, that's the Infura shirt?
This is the Infura shirt. It's just
how much are they paying you to wear that, man?
Yeah.
But yeah, so people said I was bribed with the free shirt, and that's why, because there was a picture of me wearing it, and obviously that was a bunch of nonsense. I learned a lot about Tellor after I started tweeting about Chainlink, but it would be good to sort of get the elevator pitch from you on Tellor and even how you got involved with it first before we get into the meat of it.
Sure. Yeah. So should I can probably assume sort of broad Oracle knowledge here amongst your listeners, but oracles are basically ways for smart contracts to access off-chain data. So smart contracts, you can't read an API. If you want to know the price of Bitcoin, the weather, price of the S&P 500, you need somebody to enter it manually. And the way that you sort of get that information on chain, that's what's called an oracle. Because usually you could just rely on a centralized oracle. Like if you had just one person, for instance, that's okay. But if they die or if they want to cheat you, something's wrong. So people build all of these systems out to say, well, how do we make sure that the data we're putting into these smart contracts is trustless? One of these systems is Tellor. As far as me, so I've been in Bitcoin for a long time, but my professional career in this space, I guess, started. I was actually at the government. I worked at the CFTC previous to this. So,
oh, you're a Fed. I didn't know that.
I know.
Now it all makes sense. Yeah. Okay, go on.
So I was there for a few years.
Yeah.
This was in like 2015. They asked, like, does anybody know anything about Bitcoin? They were starting a blockchain working group. And I was like, the one person at the agency that knew anything about it. So I hopped on that, and I got to listen to, all the banks come and pitch why they were putting derivatives and all of their settlement on a blockchain. And none of it made any sense to me, because I was like, you can actually do this in a decentralized way. And so I left in 2017 to go I wanted to create a decentralized derivatives platform. I got a grant from the Ethereum Foundation, which was super cool. And yeah, I brought on Mike and Brenda, who are kind of like my co-founders on that project. And we tried to build a derivatives platform. And as you know, whenever you're building a derivatives platform, which is like, betting on the price of Bitcoin, you need an oracle. So you need somebody to tell you what the price of Bitcoin is. And 2018, there were no oracles in 2018. Like, It was like, Maker was around, which was like pretty overtly centralized at the time. And you had Oracle Eyes, if you remember them. It was basically one guy.
Yeah.
It was like one guy in London running a server, and you would just pay him 50 cents, and he would put the data in your smart contract. And it worked, and that was like what people were actually using in production at the time.
Right.
But
you could still, you could still pull feeds from exchanges and things like that, right? But
using Oracle Eyes, yeah.
Oh, using Oracle Eyes, but there was no other way to get like a Coinbase price into Ethereum.
No, people would usually just run it themselves. The projects would be like, hey, I'm just gonna, me as running the derivatives protocol will just put the price in, and you guys have to trust me. And there's obviously, we can get into it from my previous job. There's obviously a lot of legal risks to doing that as a protocol. You don't want to, not to mention the fact that you throw any claims of decentralization out the window.
It's interesting to start there because, you think, okay, this was like 4 years ago about, we really didn't have, like, was Chainlink around yet?
It was Chainlink had launched a token. That's what you mean. But they came live with their price feeds in 2019.
Okay. So there was no Chainlink, there was no Tellor yet. There was only,
if you
price
remember
data.
Well, the way that some people, like, one of the biggest oracles back then was like Augur, if you remember.
Right.
So like you could use a prediction market to settle for the price, and it would just be great. It would just be potentially really, really, really slow. And even
so, I think it's good to for those that are listening that aren't fully familiar with the depth of this problem, because if you're new to the space, it's one of those problems that like is so obvious, but it's still really hard to wrap your head around, and the real core of the problem is Ethereum doesn't know the price of anything. Ethereum blockchain has no connections to the outside world that would allow it to even know the price of itself. Like, Ethereum is down big today, but the blockchain doesn't know that. Like, like everything that's happening on the blockchain is being driven from outside prices, right? So it's those price feeds, it's those oracles that are telling it what to do. And if those are centralized, you obviously have a situation where it can be manipulated. Like, there's a lot of money at stake, and there's a lot of opportunity for people to manipulate those prices to do bad things, or they just screw up, right? If you use an exchange price and the exchange gets manipulated, or just their logic fails somehow, the whole thing goes up in smoke. So the whole problem here is, and has been for years, over 4 years, right? 5, 6 years, really since Ethereum bubbled up. And even before that, in other regards, people needed decentralized oracles, but never had access.
Yeah, I think I don't have the link on me now. You can go look up. There's like an original like Reddit Bitcoin forum where they talk about like the oracle problem. And this was in like 2013.
Yeah. So, there's so many, like, even going back, to when I first came in, there was a lot of talk about atomic swaps and like, how can we do a swap between Bitcoin and Ethereum? And the tech was there. The tech has always been there. The problem has always been the price. Like, how do you know what price you're going to trade at? And you can't know that without an oracle. But back in the day, it was like you literally had to have an agreement with the other person as far as like what price. Like, you had to have that other side of the trade right in front of you almost. So this problem has been around for a long time, and now we're in the early days, right, of decentralized oracles, or oracles that call themselves decentralized, as far as having price feeds that don't rely just on one exchange, or don't rely on some guy in Europe just deciding what the price is, or on the project itself just looking for a pipe to anywhere they can get the price from. So what's unique about Tellor in the space?
Yeah, so I can give your users or your listeners just kind of brief overview of how Tellor works. So Tellor, we like to just kind of think of ourselves as a pretty simple oracle. So let's say, you need the price of Bitcoin in your smart contract. So the way that Tellor works is anybody can come and you can stake our tokens. You stake about $1,000 worth of our tokens and you put it into our smart contract. We have a whole bunch of people who do that. You come on chain and you say, hey, I'll pay $1, or the gas price basically plus $1, for somebody to go put the price of Bitcoin on chain. Any of those reporters, if it's enough money, they'll be using MEV and they'll compete to throw the price of Bitcoin on chain for you. And then you can consume it in your smart contract. You don't usually consume it instantly, though. You usually check it first, or basically anybody can check the price that was put on chain. And you can say whether or not they lied. So if he said that the price of Bitcoin was $1 million, people would come and they would dispute him. So they would say, hey, you lied. We're going to take this value off chain. And then it goes to a vote as far as whether or not he should get slashed. For you as the user, though, if there was somebody who lied, another value gets put on chain really quickly, and that's the person that you would have paid. So,
okay. So yeah. It's you're using a token to do all this, right?
We have a token, yeah.
And the token is used for voting. It's used for submitting prices.
Well, it's used for staking and tipping. Yeah, those are the main things.
Okay. So I'll start with the obvious question.
Sure.
What's stopping somebody from just buying a ton of tokens and just manipulating the system?
Yeah, so there's a few different ways that you can manipulate the system. The first way is, you could just, if you put a bad price value on chain, somebody's going to dispute you and it's going to get pulled off. So you as a user probably aren't at any risk unless nobody's monitoring at all. But, if you put a bad price value on, you could just even continuously do that. But people are sort of guaranteed to keep trying to dispute you because they know that the vote mechanism is going to last. The other thing that, the only way that it would sort of really break the system would be if you broke that voting mechanism and made that people didn't actually get slashed. And the way that Tellor works is it's sort of a 4-part system as far as how the vote works. So it's a quarter of it goes to the token holders. A quarter of it is based upon whoever the reporters are. So the historical reporters in Tellor. So if you're one of those people who's submitting prices, you get a vote. And then the user. So if you're one of the people paying for data, you also get a vote. And then we give the team a little bit as well, just for sort of a sanity check on the system. And then So that's the voting mechanism. So you could theoretically break it over time if you became the major user and reporter of Tellor. But that's it would take you a long time to do that, and it would take you a lot of money. So we don't claim to be sort of immune to hacks. Probably the cheapest way to sort of break Tellor would, and there's a whole, you can look up, we have a Tellor security article, what's the cheapest way to break Tellor? It would actually be to dispute every value that comes on chain. So you just pay money to pull them off chain, and it would run you a few $1 million a day to just pull every single value off chain. Which is,
Is that because it's still a young, if it was to accumulate more users, more diversity in the token holdings, would that evaporate, or is that a persistent thing that's always going to be there?
It's sort of a persistent thing. If you know that you need more sort of security than that amount, there's ways that you could build into where so you could just have 2 price feeds and it would double it. You could take either or, and then it would double it. But also I think most people don't realize there's sort of a max you need to get as far as censoring goes. Cause you could actually censor, the miners could censor every block on Ethereum. So if you were willing to blow $5 million, you could actually just mine every block on Ethereum for a day and just prevent all contract calls. So this is, Chainlink's not, you could prevent all contract calls to Chainlink. You could prevent all contract calls to Tellor. It's not even something that they would fork it back. You just didn't include those transactions in the block. So there's sort of if you're more secure than that, as far as censoring goes, it's sort of unnecessary.
Okay. And who's feeding prices in to Tellor at this point?
So anybody can, anybody who stakes. If you want, you can, if the project wants to. That's sort of the key claim for us as far as decentralization goes. The way that we think about it is, if the current reporters, if they all die or go down, anybody else can go and take their place. There's nothing that says that they have to be voted in by the team.
Do you have like reputable price sources as reporters, or are reporters like just token holders who are grabbing prices from anywhere they see fit?
So it depends on what the user wants, as far as like, it's sort of two separate questions. So there's like, who are the people putting data on chain, and then what is the data? You know, so it's sort of two separate problems. The first question, as far as who it is, those are our token holders, and mainly, so we've gotten some pools in there. It's a lot of like Chinese and Russian people. You can think like these are the basic anons who are doing things for a small profit and running some software. They're good people, but you know, they're not. And then,
so like, as you're saying that, by the way, I'm thinking in my head, okay, do I need, and I know the answer to this, but do I need to trust some anonymous people in China and Russia if I'm using Tellor as an oracle in my project? But it sounds like the way you've set this whole thing up is the incentives are there, to be honest, right?
Yeah.
And you disincentivize dishonesty. So you're really relying on financial incentives rather than trust.
Right. Like, it's similar to like, do you care if, you know, half the Bitcoin miners are in China? No.
Right.
Like,
which it's like you say it like it's a given in Ethereum, but like in Ethereum, we've strayed so far from this idea that we should be using financial incentives as opposed to just trust. Like every DeFi project that has a multi-sig or that has, you know, any type of centralization, or that uses Chainlink, is relying on trust in some way and not on financial incentives.
No, exactly.
So Tellor, like from the beginning, was this your idea that, because you said you came from kind of a Bitcoin background, so were you determined to find a way to build something using just financial incentives and no trust?
Completely. I mean, we like, you know, even from the get-go, like we did like, you know, this was like a meme way back when, you know, you forget about like no pre-mine and no ICO, you know, trying to do it right from the get-go. So like I came from like the libertarian background, as far as like the reason that we're doing Bitcoin, Ethereum, and all of these smart contracts is for decentralization. Like that's, you know, it's for creating this sort of censorship finance that, you know, in the end will sort of bleed into helping freedom of speech and helping sort of freedom to move money wherever it wants. Like that's the original goal. So in order to do that, you need to be decentralized. To me, that's always like where the value proposition has lied. So making something that is sort of centralized, just, it didn't fit.
Yeah. And how is that felt over the past 4 years? Like how is, I mean, because what I'm getting at is, what I'm getting at is, you know, for people that think like this, which I think you and I are on the same wavelength with a lot of this, you know, I think going back and looking at Bitcoin's development and first its invention in like 2009, which is now 13 years ago. And it had 13 years since then to grow into what it is today. You know, and for most of those years, nobody really even knew it was around. A very, very small group of people were involved. And it had a lot of time to mature and grow into sort of a battle-tested warrior, you know, in the world of finance. So how has it felt for you with Tellor? Just, I mean, you started up in 2019, you said?
Yeah.
So how has it been over the past 3 years? Like, as you've watched other projects that are more centralized sort of have more success, you know, and adoption?
Yeah, no, it's rough. I mean, you definitely, you have to sort of believe in it, or else it gets to you, because, you know, there's a lot of sort of shortcuts you can make in terms of, you know, just jumping the gun and trying to cash out. But, you know, I don't know, for us, it's always come from more of a philosophical background, so it's easier to stay true. But yeah, no, it always sucks whenever you see, you know, centralized competitors. I mean, even from our get-go, like one of our early competitors was like Band Protocol in 2019, because they had an ICO like the same month, like a month after we launched, and their ICO, like, you know, we couldn't even get, like, we were like listed at like a $2 million market cap or something tiny, and like they ICO'd at a $30 million market cap, and we're like, oh my god, like, and they had nothing. It was literally like they were calling themselves the Chainlink of Asia back then. It was,
wow, yeah,
that was
the
their
golden
marketing
era of ICOs.
right? And so we're like, oh man, is this how it's gonna go? Like,
yeah.
But in the end, it sort of worked out. Like, we're starting to see some good traction now. But yeah, you see, but you see it everywhere. Like, this isn't my first bull bear cycle. Like even the last time, whether it's the EOSs that did really well, or a lot of those other little flashy ICO projects. Over time, the market weeds them out. But you just got to be patient.
So Tellor you have a company, right?
Yeah,
that's developing the protocol.
We do.
And the company is a corporation, and corporations are intended to generate profit, unless it's a nonprofit or a PBC or something like that. But
yeah, but nobody owns. So this is something. So like we've talked to lawyers. I mean, this is probably getting way deep in the weeds. We've talked to lawyers about like, can we just decentralize and become a DAO? And do that for the founders. Like, so we have a C Corp here in the US. And it's still unclear to us what that gets us, in a lot of ways, like if considering like it would probably be hard for us to, go completely anonymous at this point, at least, and keep working on the project. Like a lot of times, a lot of times, like whenever you see like companies like, oh, we're going to go to a DAO, like it's basically you just like pay everybody indirectly from the smart contract. So it would be like, I make TRB for my salary, and that's like how, and then you have a multi-sig that pays out to people. That's like what most DAOs are now.
Yeah.
And the problem is that, we've talked to it, like we've talked to a couple of lawyers, but even just reading it ourselves, like usually does that mean the developer themselves takes on any liability? As far as like, you might actually just be giving up a lot of the corporate protections that you have in the law. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, it's super hard.
Yeah. There's pros and cons, and there's projects that are doing it both ways, right?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing we're trying to sort of set up Tellor in the way is like, if the whole team died and the corporation, or we all get sent to prison, or the multi-sig is completely taken over by the FBI, like, does it affect Tellor, and in how? Like, like in now, like, okay, you can
multi-sig?
Well, like our team wallet or whatever,
okay, that's right. Like, the Tellor multi-sig is just a wallet.
Yeah,
right?
we just hold money. So like, you could steal our money, but like, could you break the protocol? And that's like making sure that even if that happened, like it's good, like the system can run without us. Like that's our goal. So I think it's like a little bit different. And then even if we want some protections from having a entity or whatever, it's still okay.
Well, what I was getting at before was you got the corporation, and corporations are intended to generate profit.
Yeah.
But you guys are making decisions that are sort of not fully aligned with that goal, right? You're
for sure.
If you were just chasing profit, you would be centralizing, because you can always achieve more when you're in a more centralized, or when you make those trade-offs you were alluding to before. So how do you reconcile that internally? Like, what? First of all, I find it admirable. I think this is the way forward. I find that, when you start to bring corporate entities and investors in and stuff like that, then it starts to get a little tricky, right? Because then you have to please a lot of different parties.
Yeah, I mean, so we don't really have outside investors in it. It's like sort of like we never did like VC rounds. So we don't have we've never like issued stock or even done like a Series A where we have a board or anything like that.
Why?
Because we never had to, I guess, which is good, but it's like we originally we tried to raise money in like 2019, and it sort of worked out for the best. Like we went we went around, like we talked to most of the San Francisco VCs and all the guys out there, and like we were trying to raise, and like my pitch to them was like, if we hit a $5 million market cap, you make your money back. Like it's a no-brainer. And this was 2019 though, so they all said no. And but I think it was one of these things where like they could just tell how I was like sort of disgusted with VCs and the idea of bringing VCs on the books. So it was like, you're going through the motions, but you really don't want them on.
But you were trying.
You sort of, like whenever you're a project, like even early on, like people hear about you and they'll, like VCs will call just say, hey, what's up? Can we invest?
But you could have easily have fallen into that trap. I mean, if somebody said, all right, we're going to cut you a check right now, and you'd be in a different place right now.
For sure. It's super hard. I mean, like, I don't, like if somebody's like in 2019, like, we were in our derivatives project, like I ran out of money so many times. Like I was building people shit tokens on the side on Upwork to like keep the lights on at our derivative project. Like if somebody came with like, like I know like around a similar time, like, or a little after, like API 3 raised $20 million. Like, man, that would have been like life changing. But it sort of played out into actually making something that's worthwhile versus just having a corporate system to exit, I guess you could say.
So do you feel like once you get that VC money, it forces the trade-offs? Like, do you feel like Tellor would be in a different place right now if you had raised?
For sure. Yeah, 100%.
You would have given up on your principles because you would have had to?
It's not necessarily that you have to, but you just sort of know what's expected. This isn't like my thinking alone. Like there's a lot of people, like it's just like sort of the incentive structure of like, once you have a bunch of outside investors who are talking to you and you have that system in place, you make different decisions. Like even if you personally don't want to, it's just, like it's like in the corporate world, like, are you actively doing things to, promote wealth inequality? Well, no, but it's like just the way that the whole corporate structure and the systems that we have are set up, like it leads to that. And in a similar vein, like if you raise a whole bunch of money, you know that the investors are ultimately seeking an exit, and how do you sort of deliver that to them? And it changes how you think about things, definitely in the short term. And I think like a big one, so definitely the biggest one that we had, if you remember, I know you probably hate this about Chainlink too. They do the partnership announcements.
Who is this?
Like Chainlink. So they do partnership announcements.
Right.
24/7 that are just completely meaningless. And this was big in the ICO land. Everybody did partnership announcements and none of them meant anything. And like we said from day one, it's like, I never want to do a partnership announcement with anybody. Like you can do like an integration announcement, or like we can have them on a dev call or something, but like, we're not going to do these Medium articles with the slash through it and show like this meaningless thing, because like but you want to do that because people get in this cycle of like, I need that dopamine hit of positive news from my protocols to feel good about my investment. And
yeah,
it's super.
This is what I was getting at before a little bit was like Chainlink operates more like a tech company that is striving for a specific goal, whether it's influence or profit or power or whatever it might be, which lines up more with the traditional tech company, right? Where in a capitalist society, this is what it looks like. It's you have companies that are pursuing big goals, and not just principled goals, but actual capitalist goals. And Tellor, it sounds like, is in the position it's in right now, where it is still a principled project that is putting principle over profit, but almost out of necessity, almost, or not necessity, but like it's almost an accident, because you could have raised a few years ago, and you might have had a VC involved. You might have had more than one involved, and you might have been sort of yeah, like you said, like that expectation. When I said forced before, it almost is kind of forced, because it's like you have to please your investors. And this isn't unique to Ethereum or anything like that. This is tech. This is not just tech. It's the world. Like if you start a company, you have a big idea, you want to hire a bunch of people, you have this big vision, you want to raise $10 million, you get a bunch of investors. They're going to have a say in how you run your business, and if you are in a business where you want to stay, I've seen it multiple times. People start companies, they have a certain vision for them, they have a certain reason they're doing it. You know, they want to make the world a better place, whatever. Then they raise capital, and then a year or two later, they're in their board meetings with their investors there, and they're like, you know, why is this KPI so low? Why is this, you know, you need to do something about this and this and this. And the only way they can achieve those goals is to trade off on their initial principles, like what they came in believing was true. All of a sudden they have to go back on it. So it sounds like that could have happened with Tellor. It's happened with most projects in the Ethereum space that have
No, raised. I mean, I always think about Uniswap as a great example. Like, I wish like Uniswap wouldn't have raised. Like, just would have never done the token, but just been like, hey, like the product's great. We're just going to go away as a team. Pieced out. Like, that would have been cool. Like,
it's really an incredible story. Like, there's got to be a book one day just about Uniswap, because I mean, it started out, like you said, like one guy, you know, who he brought others on the team, but like it was a small group, principled group. You know, they decided to build in a decentralized, immutable, unstoppable way, which is what the Uniswap protocols have been so far, version 1 through 3. And then they went down that path. You know, it's unavoidable. You're in your 20s, you're a CEO, you don't really know what's going on. You get tons of money coming your way, and most 20 somethings are not going to say no to it, you know? And then next thing you know, they've got a staff full of feds, no offense, but like they've hired a bunch of people from government. They've got a VC firm of their own, or a VC wing of Uniswap. They launched a token which was abused by VCs. The exit liquidity is ridiculous, you know, and the airdrop thing they invented. But now it's to the point where I'm afraid of what version 4 is going to look like. So, but yeah, you're right to use this as an example.
No, it's super tough, but anyway.
Yeah, but it's interesting to I wanted to talk to you about that a little bit, because I preach a lot about obviously building trustlessly and decentralized as you can, and maximizing decentralization and minimizing trust. And you guys have done it. But what I wanted to hear more from you about is, do you feel like sticking to those principles has cost you a competitive edge? Like, do you feel like it limits the rate at which you can grow, as opposed to, while you watch other projects that are more centralized and making those trade-offs, having success, does it make you question your approach, or do you stay committed to those principles because you know it's the right thing in the long term?
Yeah, I mean, you can always look back. Like it's one of those things. Like, if Tellor would have pumped to 10x what it did, like, we would have had more. That's always the trade-off that you say in your head. Like, then we would have had more money to build it the way that we want to do. But in reality, you never do. You know, it always sort of leads to something bigger, just because you have investors and you have people who are expecting you. So, yeah, I mean, like, I try and just keep myself, especially as a team, like, we try and keep ourselves kind of humble as far as, like, you know, I feel lucky enough, like, I have a house that, you know, I can afford, working full-time at Tellor, which is phenomenal. Like, I've been, you know, sort of running Tellor with, you know, a bunch of people who I love working with for years now, which is just awesome. So try not to think, try not to think too much beyond that. It gets tough.
Yeah, but do you think that in the long term, do you think that this idea can gain adoption, or do you think that the centralized options are going to continue to sort of be the most attractive?
No, I'm excited for the bear market. I think you'll see it. I think you see a flip. You know, I think you're starting to see it flip here with Tellor, and, you know, we're starting to get some adoption, and you know, even like you see little pieces, like Solana goes up really high, but then, like, I mean, do you think Solana's going to be around next bull market? Not in the same fashion. Nobody's going to be building there. You know, none of these centralized protocols are going to be there. So, you know, like, it's one of those things that even long term, like, where do I see sort of the ecosystem as a whole of cryptocurrency in 10 years or 5 years? And I don't think we don't necessarily need to have mass retail adoption to be successful. Like it's okay if we're like the cool cypherpunks and we have a bunch of super immutable tools and we can do anything we want. It's okay if Amazon isn't using you. Like that's cool. And I think that's sort of the different mindset that we have. I can bring it up because I just thought about it. Like we went to I told you we went to the Blockchain Oracle conference last week. And I gave a presentation. I'm sure they'll be online somewhere about like how to turn Tellor more into a protocol. So like the ideal vision of Tellor is, people don't even look at it like similar like you would look at like a Uniswap or a Bitcoin or something. Like this is just sort of a protocol. It's unchanging. This is how it works. How do we get Tellor to that? And then the next day at the same time was Chainlink's presentation, and they had Brent come on from Chainlink. Very polished presentation, but it was all about how T-Mobile and Amazon and these reputable partners are coming on and acting as nodes. And this is the future, and they're gonna, you're gonna have every company running a Chainlink node, and they'll be providing data, and this is how you can trust Chainlink. And I was like, man, like it's just complete opposite mentalities. Like where do you see the space? And it's like I don't think that's going to be the vision for crypto. Like I don't think, like that's not why you would build on Ethereum. That's why you would go build, in the centralized world, like go build just a Web2 company. Like that's fine.
Yeah.
So.
Do you think that Tellor is ready for more adoption? Like, do you feel like that it works to the point and has been battle tested enough where a new DeFi project should feel comfortable using it as a primary data source?
Definitely. Yeah. No, I think definitely DeFi projects can do it. I think if you're one of these projects that, kind of like we were talking about some of the monetary, like if you're going to have billions and billions of dollars in your protocol, let's sit down and think about this properly. But, you should think about what chain you're on as well properly. We're seeing a lot more adoption now on the L2s. To be honest, I think you probably know too, Ethereum's really, really expensive. So most of our adoption now is coming on, say, Polygons or Arbitrum Optimism type stuff. So it's perfect fits for these projects that want to be really quick moving, add things. One of the bigger things that I think that we're trying to flip. So I'm starting to talk to people in the Oracle space. The mentality we need to flip is it's like everybody who comes to us to use an Oracle, they come and they say like, can we use this data? Can you put this data on chain? And can we have your permission to do this? Like, how much do we have to pay you? And it's this centralized model, like it's they feel like they have to come to us as a team in order to get data put on chain. And like that's what I want to flip. Like, no, like guys, you can actually go do it with Tellor. Like you don't even have to call us. You can just go do it. Don't think that you need our permission to do it, but it's like everything flows from Chainlink in that sense. Like, if you want to use Chainlink, you got to go sort of ask permission and get them to sign some papers. And if you want a new data feed, it's a big long process. Whereas us, it's like, no, like just go do it, guys. You can do it. So if you're talking to somebody's building in DeFi or on Ethereum, why should they use Tellor over Chainlink? I mean, yes, there's the principal reasons, but as far as efficiency, as far as accuracy, reliability, are there benefits to Tellor over Chainlink? For sure. I think some of the bigger pieces are just around the edges. Like, you can assume that for most cases, Chainlink will be just fine. Like they're big Web2 company. If you want an ETH US dollar price feed, they're relatively going to be reliable. You can sort of trust them. But it's when you can't trust them that things are going to go. It's similar to like, should you just use a centralized exchange? Well, no, get your coins off of a centralized exchange. Most people know why. It's like most of the time it's going to be just fine, but they're holding your coins. Like if regulators come after you, or if the exchange goes under, you're going to lose all your crypto. So I think that's sort of how Tellor can be thought about versus Chainlink. Like most of the time it's probably going to be fine, but some of the issues we've seen with Chainlink just come in terms of, okay, well, what happens, what happens if regulators don't like your use case and they go after Chainlink? Would Chainlink comply? Most likely they would probably have to. And nothing against Chainlink, but they would have to do that. So you'd be in trouble. Another thing too that we like to say is sort of liveness guarantees. So Chainlink has a set number of nodes, and if those nodes go down, there's nothing you can do about it as a user. You've seen this problem. So if you remember, like Black Thursday, I've been giving this example probably for too many years now. It was like crypto prices crashed by 50% in one day. Mm-hmm. And gas prices, of course, shot through the roof. So it was crazy expensive. And all the Chainlink nodes basically just like kind of stopped pushing data on chain as much. And because it got more expensive, even the maker nodes like sort of were slow to update because you hit like all the max gas settings in all of your nodes. And for the Chainlink node operators, like what's the incentive for them to put that on chain and pay the higher gas prices? There's actually none. They don't get paid more or less if they're putting it on versus not. And you as a user, is there any way for you to directly pay them or incentivize them? Well, no. You're sort of just trusting them. So people kind of got screwed over as far as like you had some stale prices. So I think whereas if you build a system that's flexible, similar like Ethereum, yes, things can get more expensive when they're busy, but if you want a transaction to go through, you can mine the block yourself. You can pay some miner and they'll put it in. And I think just building systems that sort of can scale like that, it's different.
How does Tellor fix that problem right there?
So with that one, you can just tip. So if gas prices get really expensive, you can up your tip. You can mine it yourself. You can go stake our token and you can report it yourself. Of course, anybody can dispute you, but a bunch of different ways as far as just having it openly and permissionless. Like it would be similar to like if all the Chainlink nodes went down and then you could just go become a Chainlink node and report prices. That would be cool, but you can't.
Okay. So, but the reporters are still incentivized to push prices even when the gas prices are high?
Yeah, well, you have to pay them. So, like you have to pay them more if gas prices get higher.
Okay. Clarify for me how that part works. So let's say I'm a reporter. I've got prices. Gas is like 1,000 gwei and I don't want to mess with it. How does somebody incentivize me to do that?
So we have a tip contract. You can send money there. Usually so what you would say is that we call them reporter software. People have a bunch of different ones that you can run, and they usually have what's called profitability checks. So like, is the amount of money I'm getting from your tip greater than the amount I'm going to be spending in gas? And if it is, I'm going to submit it. If it's not, I'm not going to submit. So
and this is all happening on chain?
Well, no. So that profitability check is off chain, but the tip is on chain, and the data that I push is on chain.
So I'm that reporter, and so there's something happening on chain, this tip contract I can look at.
Yeah.
Or I can have a bot or whatever that says if X plus Y equals Z, then or is greater than Q, then set a price. Okay. Then it's going to pull the price from whatever sources I'm using and pull it. And then that person who's tipping has to hope that it's valid price.
Well, they don't have to hope. I mean, if it's a bad price, you're incentivized to dispute them. So like if it's a bad price, I'll put up a dispute fee and I'll get your stake. So,
okay.
Well, anybody would. Usually the people who dispute are other reporters. So like all the reporters sort of hate each other. So if somebody puts up a bad price, they quickly check and submit a dispute. So we've had like 7 disputes over the past year, and I think every single one of them has just been like somebody, like a few of them were like, hey, I was testing my reporter and I accidentally had it on mainnet. A few of those, and then you had a few of like the APIs would go down and somebody would accidentally submit 0, and then you would find out that they were only using one API, which is, we tell them is a no-go, but they don't listen.
Gotcha. So the developer of, let me just ask a few things that I'm still not totally clear on. The developer of a project needs price. He's tipping to get the price. Reporter sends the price. The price that they're receiving in whatever app is asking for it, the price it needs to be used right now. right? It needs to be used immediately for whatever purpose, you know, to see if something should be liquidated or
Well,
so.
sometimes. So yeah, no,
What do
we
you mean
usually,
by sometimes?
well, we tell people to wait, you know, because you want to wait for a dispute. That's the difference piece in Tellor. So that's like, you can't use prices from Tellor right away.
Okay.
Because there has to be a dispute period as far as you see it put on chain. How long do you want to wait to use it? And that we leave up to the user. So obviously, the longer you want to wait, the more secure you are. If you wanted to use it within a minute, as long as you're sort of checking it yourself and submitting disputes, that could be okay. It depends on sort of the protocol and what the risks are to using it right away.
Okay. So like in that case, like somebody waits a minute and is doing some kind of sanity check on their end against another price source, whether, you know, another Oracle or AMM or something like that. So there's no, like, you cannot use Tellor without a backup, right? You have to have something that you're checking it against.
No, I mean, you can check it off chain and then dispute.
But you have to check it.
Well, you would
like,
hope
okay,
that, you would hope that the system would be checking itself, but
conflicting it with comparing it to like Aave. Aave's using Chainlink with no check.
Yes.
Right? So they're just using Chainlink prices. Yeah. They're not checking them. They're using them right away as soon as they receive them. As far as I know.
Bad idea.
And there's no automated check. I mean, I'm sure they can eyeball it after the fact, but if Chainlink sends a bad price,
everyone's
it's over. Yeah. But they have so much faith in it that they're doing that. But you would never advise somebody to use Tellor in that way.
No, certainly not. Yeah, usually you would want to tell people, just assume that the Oracle can fail and build in some sort of methodology for having it fail. Whether it's adding another Oracle that it switches to, or, you know, so for instance, Maker has, you know, they have, when they get an Oracle update, they wait an hour before they update it in the system. And there's like the extreme, it's extreme, but like you can shut down the whole system and unwind it all if the Oracle price is that bad. So like at least you have, you know, at least something could be done. And so, yeah, definitely just thinking through how an Oracle could fail, and it's definitely best practice.
Man, just having this conversation makes me realize how early we still are. Like, it's crazy. Like that.
For sure.
You can already picture in 10 years from now, like this, people would hear this conversation. It's going to sound like a Bitcoin conversation 10 years ago now, you know, like, or maybe even longer, you know, where it's like, you know, block size, or, you know, actually block size was only 4 years ago. So it's crazy stuff. But
I think that was longer than 4 years ago now, but
yeah, well, yeah, I guess
it's getting back.
What do you think about the current state of Ethereum in the way that things are trending as far as oracles? Like, do you feel like more people are choosing just faster, like going with the crowd, almost choosing the faster, easier to use stuff? And do you feel like that trend's going to continue, or do you feel like there's a chance to still shift it?
I think there's a good chance we'll shift it. I mean,
how's that going to look?
I hate to say it. I think regulators will probably be decentralization's friend for the next few years.
You mentioned that before. So you think Chainlink gets a call from a regulator? How does that?
Yeah,
go?
Well, in a lot of ways. So, like, I gave this talk before on the Polymarket case. You know, Polymarket they were running a prediction market, and in the CFTC action, if you're a prediction market, you're supposed to go register at the CFTC. And one of the things that they claimed, A, they were running their own website, and B, they were resolving their own markets, which is they're the settlement price to the prediction market, which is you were running the Oracle. And the obvious question comes in, okay, so like if resolving markets makes you have to go register, that's cool. But if you give the job of resolving markets to Chainlink, does Chainlink now have to go register if everything else is decentralized? And the answer, you know, like I talked to the regulators who I used to work with about it, and they were like, you're asking the right questions.
Oh gosh, that's not a good sign.
Yeah, and you're like, oh dear God.
If they can understand the question, then they want to chase it and enforce it somehow.
But yeah, certainly. So I think, like, what would it look like if they went? It would probably be like there's like all the requests for information first, and they come and do a deep dive and try and actually figure out what's going on. But I think the regulators are smart enough to know exactly what's going on in most of these cases. And yeah, like, it's just, you would really have trouble getting around the fact that Chainlink probably would need to go register in some sense. I mean, not even mentioning the whole security aspect of it. So, I think a lot of these financial products that people are building, because the harder products that Tellor has, we have a little bit of a wait period, and people want, even like what are the problems with using Ethereum versus a Solana? And the actual answer is like, people are coming in and they're trying to build they're just trying to build financial engineered products from the Web 2 world. So high frequency trading, high frequency leverage derivatives trading, things that you see in a normal, on a normal exchange, and they're just putting them onto these platforms, and they want it to work like a Web 2 world. But like, it can't. Like, Ethereum's slower, there's not finality, Oracle's, we have some issues as far as you got to wait for disputes, and prices aren't exact. So like, yeah, whenever people are just trying to build these Web 2 financial products and trying to get retail adoption, that's not good for the space. I'm hoping that over time we get away from doing that. We have our own separate financial products that we want to use, and we build things on a blockchain that should be built on a blockchain, namely things that need censorship resistance. And once we get back to that, that'll be good. So,
yeah, I get, like, the what you're saying right now is often used in response to some of the criticism I put out there. Like, well, how else are we supposed to build a high frequency trading system on Ethereum if we can't do it this way? And that's the feedback I usually give, which they cannot wrap their heads around, is like, maybe you shouldn't be building a high frequency trading system on Ethereum. Maybe this is not the right technology. And maybe you're trying to do something that this wasn't really designed to do. And maybe you're just going to mutate this whole thing into something way worse if you continue down this path. And then the feedback is always, well, then what are we going to do? Like, you have a better idea on something to build here? And, then my feedback to them is, well, guess what? Maybe the real use of this stuff hasn't been discovered yet, and maybe we need to keep on trying new things in order to figure out what this new financial world is going to look like. Because if it's just going to look exactly like the old financial world with the same middlemen and the same, and with more security risks and more trust requirements, then what's the point? Like, what are we really adding into this? Yes, you have permissionlessness, you have transparency to a certain extent, but those two things alone don't make this worth it. Those trade-offs, you have permissionlessness and transparency, but you have more trust required, you have more centralization, you have more middlemen involved, more layers almost sometimes than in the traditional world, which people don't understand, but you will when Chainlink gets regulated and you have all these watchdogs involved, and but I hear you on that. And do you have any ideas on what those financial tools are going to look like yet, or do you agree that it's still too early to know?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been like, I don't know, what are the use cases that we've done in the past? Like with Bitcoin, you got like digital gold, but then, like, what were the actual use cases that took off here? I think you had like people were using it for capital controls and for buying drugs online. And then you had ICOs, which would be like, I would say, regulatory arbitrage, in the sense that like issuing a stock and raising money early for companies was sort of a pain in the ass. So people started doing ICOs, and, investing in early stage companies was really hard. So ICOs took off. And then the problem became, well, the regulators cracked down on that, and there was no way to trade or do anything with them for a while. So decentralized exchanges took off, and you can say that they've took off. So like, what's sort of next? And I think, I bet we're going to see privacy come back. We need all this stuff to be private. we still need DEC bridges to work. Bridges are still really centralized. Bridges are basically oracles as well. So an oracle on each chain grabs information about the other chain. So having like cross-chain dexes and having, I know you talked to the Thor chain guys, which, there's some stuff to be hoped for there, but it's an early implementation. And I think that over time we're going to get really, really good ones. And then if everything on these networks is private, and then, we obviously want so what are the actual censorship resistant things that we want to see? Okay. So like free speech. So like having better journalism or having platforms for, academic integrity on chain. Like those are the ones that I think that you're going to eventually see on chain that we haven't yet. But, do we need a Facebook on chain? Do we need a YouTube on chain? Probably not. And that's okay.
Yeah. What do you think? What do you think Chainlink's going to look like in 5 years?
I gave my hot take last week. I don't know, like seeing them, and they've hired all these people. I think it would be fun to see if their token price goes down enough to see if they actually issue a stock. I think that would be fun. So you transition from actually into that world, and then you just completely go into the Web 2 world.
So that's what I'm getting at. Do you think that it continues to just transition into a centralized entity? What a lot of these teams are trying to do is like fake the decentralization, right? Like have these theatrics. I guess what I'm wondering is with a project like Chainlink, do you think, and by the way, this is as opposed to a project like Tellor that takes pride in its, openness and permissionlessness and trustlessness, very different things. But do you think that it's going to take a project like Chainlink to continue, more in that direction, more corporate, like you said, issue Definitely. A stock, become regulated?
They're obviously buddies with the WEF, and who have they brought on? They brought on like Eric Schmidt from Google, and they brought on like ex Microsoft people. Mm-hmm. I think you see it in the space a lot. So like most founders, like Vitalik and a few others aside, like once you get those billions of dollars, which I'm sure Sergey and the early guys have, what happens? So I think like Maker is a good example of a project that like did it sort of okay, and that they decentralized all the pieces and quit, and they got out that way. And you're trying to basically protect yourself from ever going to prison because you made a whole bunch of money. And then, I think like Sergey and all the guys over at Chainlink, like I think you hire out a bunch of Web 2 corporate people to try and run this business that you have a ton of money in. You have more bank than probably most crypto project, like any crypto project. So what do you do with it? And their thinking isn't sort of built on this decentralization, so they'll try and build it like a Web 2 company. How can they sort of make money as a Web 2 company? And so that's the route that I see them going down, and that's like I hope they go. I will gladly usher them out. If they wish them the best of luck. So
you're saying that because you think then they'll be exposed as sort of what they really are, which is kind of a more centralized entity. But do you think that would really hurt adoption for them, or do you think it would help adoption if they are the regulated path that you can legally use as a price source?
Sure.
Do you think that would hurt them or help them with adoption in the Ethereum space?
I think it would hurt them for sure, because I think protocols like Aave or other ones who compound, who rely on that meme, the idea of decentralization, wouldn't be able to use them then. So people who go down that path for their own rights, you're going to see this split in the long run, and that's because like if you want, let's say, kind of like we were talking before, these applications will be private, and you're going to be able to do these things without anybody knowing or anybody be able to stop it. Eventually, if these get large enough, the US is going to come on and say, well, North Korea or some terrorist organization put money through here, and you are therefore abetted, helping people launder money and it's illegal. Chainlink would not then be able to provide prices to them, or they would need to have some way to shut that off. And that's eventually what I see going. And unless you actually have the, sort of like the liquidity or the teller system where it's like, hey, we would love to, but we can't. You're in trouble. So that's where I think the systems are going to go eventually. Like, you have to build these things so you can't shut it off, because at some point somebody's going to ask you to, and you're going to have to.
Doesn't it seem more likely though that some of these like lending protocols, for instance, would try to redefine themselves in a way where they could shut it off? By
maybe. Compound got raided and everything.
I mean, one of the predictions I've had for a while is that this stuff would start to come down where they try to force DeFi or they say terrorists are using it, North Korea is using it, whatever. And then that gives the DeFi project a reason to move its primary platform to a layer 2. It could be a new layer 2. It doesn't exist yet, where the only way to bridge in and out is through a regulated KYC AML bridge of sort. Maybe it's even a centralized bridge. And that's the only way in and out. And then if you want to legally use this thing, this is the place to do it. Of course, you can still do illegal stuff, but who wants to do illegal stuff, right? Everybody's afraid to do illegal stuff. They don't want to use stuff that's out, So, and plus, all the liquidity would just follow, because VCs don't want to break the law. Institutions don't want to break the law.
No,
do you think that's a realistic?
It is, for sure. No, but I think you would still there would be a segment of DeFi and of the crypto sector that would still stay Wild Westish. It would move more into the shadows, maybe. Like in the same way, like if you would have said, like, similar to how and I think it would become separate communities too. Like, I'd say like the Bitcoin and Ethereum communities now are almost completely separate as far as like the Bitcoin maxis go. And, like, who would have said 10 years ago, like, oh, in the future, like, Bitcoin, you're only going to trade it on KYC AML exchanges, and the vast holders are going to be big banks and those customers trading it on Robinhood or some centralized app. And you would have been like, no, you're crazy. We're never going to do that. Like, we're going to keep innovating. And I think this might be like that moment for Ethereum where we move. Yeah, maybe there will be like a KYC chain or something like that where you have to have it there. But
so where do you see Tellor in 5 years then, if that kind of progression occurs?
I hope we stay on the cypherpunk side. I want to stay on the side of people continuing to fight. Ideally, we're enough of a useful tool and sort of taken out of it as far as like where we go that people can use it on either one. So like similar, like you'd expect Uniswap on both of them or to be launched on both of them. Like, I hope we're like the standard in the tool, and that's the way that you do it. But you don't think of Tellor that way. You think of Tellor just, this is something that can be used on any of these blockchain platforms, and it works, is decentralized, and don't expect anything else of it. That would be cool.
So if somebody wants to get started exploring Tellor, using Tellor as their primary data feed now, like you said, like, they don't have to call you. They can just read the docs, do it, right? Whether they're receiving prices or reporting prices or whatever they want to do, is permissionless. Like, anybody can jump in or out at any time.
Completely. Yeah.
Okay.
But then on the same note, if you guys need any help, give us a call, because we're happy to help too. You've got a Discord or something that people can jump into? Yeah, we got a Discord. Website is tellor.io. People can jump in and just come find us. Is there anybody you would tell not to even waste their time with Tellor because it won't work? Like, we already talked about like HFT, and like, if you need immediate prices or immediate data that you act on immediately, you're not going to find that in a trustless way, right? Yeah, don't do that. There's literally no option for those people. They have to use centralized data feeds, right? Yeah, or if you're using a centralized data feed, like, like if we've had some projects that are like, we run an API and we want to put it on chain. Can you put it on chain through Tellor? I'm like, why don't you guys just put the data feed on chain?
Right.
You can shut it down.
Yeah.
But yeah, so those kind of things make Tellor would not be an ideal use for.
And that's where you get the pushback sometimes. It's like, well, then, you know, decentralization will never be better because you can't do X, Y, Z with it. And, you know, bottom line is decentralization, unfortunately, it's true. I think it's always a little bit slower. It's always a little bit messier. It's always a little bit less efficient. You can't truly build and maximize decentralization without those trade-offs. You just can't. You know, you're always going to have slick, fast, cheap, efficient, centralized systems. You know, you compare Bitcoin to PayPal, you know, which one's faster, right? PayPal's faster. But there's a reason we have Bitcoin. There's a reason we need Tellor. There's a reason we need liquidity. There's a reason we need these truly trustless and immutable and unstoppable products. So thank you for doing this and for, I mean, it's not, it's the hard path. It is. It's the difficult path. But you know, you see it
too, man. This is awesome. Like just educating people is the best. Like, I mean, you don't know how many people we talk to that were before they listened to you or before that they sort of really deep dived into Chainlink. Like they didn't even know there were other oracles. They didn't know it was something you could choose. And so like just educating people it's so important. Yeah.
I mean, that's the reason I put it out there. You know, it's just, and it's, again, I'm not promoting one over the other. We're just putting truth out there. You know, it's just facts. It's the way it is, you know, and, you know, if you're heavily invested in something, you know, and it upsets you, I'm sorry, you know, that's too bad. There's nothing we're saying here or anywhere that's not factual. Chainlink operates like a corporation. It has a 4 of 9 multi-sig that can control any of its price feeds. And there's a number of other reasons that you should look at it with skepticism if you're looking for something that is decentralized and is going to stay decentralized and has the proper the incentive alignment that you should be looking for as a DeFi project. Tellor is much more in line with, you know, incentive alignment, trustlessness. Now, does this stuff come with trade-offs? Yeah. You know, I mean, you know, if you want to use a Chainlink price and you want to use it that second, then, you know, you can do that. You're making trade-offs there too. Tellor, do you want to use that price as soon as you receive it? No. We haven't found the perfect model yet, but if you have to decide what you're going to maximize. And that's where a lot of devs in this space, they struggle, you know, and especially when they achieve a little bit of success and that VC money shows up. And then, you know, it's game over as far as sticking to your principles. And that's why I tend to be pretty anti-VC in the space, you know, just for that reason. Because like we just talked about, that investment forces people to compromise on their principles. So if you're building in the space...
What did Chainlink raise? Do you know?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah, no, I don't. It was early, for sure.
Yeah, it's been interesting to watch. So, you know, hopefully one day I can have a similar chat with somebody from Chainlink and, you know, ask. I mean, I'm sure there's another side of the story. It's just nobody wants to talk about it, you know. So it'd be good to do that. But well, thank you for joining, and thank you for staying principled and strong in the space. And
thanks for
Tellor. Look at the show notes if you're still listening and you want to check Tellor out. I'll put the links and the website and the Discord and stuff like that in the show notes. So thanks again, Nick.
Thanks. Yeah, talk to you soon.